Hello, welcome to smalltech.com. So this will be a follow-up to the series. Sorry for the long wait. So I'm going to be revising the simple registration previously created. So I'll be using HTML, Entity Framework, C#, and SQL for this revised series. In the future, I will be adding additional things to the form, such as Knockout.js, in particular Knockout validation, and other things to enhance the form. So relax and enjoy. So the first thing that I'm going to do is create a database. So I'm going to call it custom registration database DB 2017. Execute. And what I'm going to be doing after, going to just comment this out because I don't want it to interfere with anything, and then I'm going to say use so that it uses the right server each time, database each time. Alright, so I'm going to just create a table, just a user table. User. So I'm going to create a user ID. I'm going to be using a unique identifier, so I can decide. Sorry, give me a second. So I'm going to be using a unique identifier, so that I'm able to add a primary key from the entity side of things, instead of the database determining what the ID is. So I'm just going to have a first name, varchar of 30, and the last name, as well, and an email address. Make it 50. And then finally a password. So we're going to keep it 50 as well. Alright, so I'm going to execute. Alright, I was going to call it user detail because it seemed that it may have been a keyword or something. Alright, execute. Alright, now I'm going to create a Visual Studio project. I'm going to use 4.5 for this project. Alright, so I'm going to go new project. And then alright, so new project, then web. I'm going to, as I said, 4.5 I'm going to be using. Alright, so I'm going to name it custom registration API. Alright, so it's going to be an API, so we can extend it to, for example, make it accessible via mobile or other means. Alright. So okay. So it's going to be an MVC application, but I'm going to also have a web API attached to it. And later on, we are going to be doing some unit testing of the application. Okay, so the project has been created. Alright, I'm going to be adding preparing the project. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add toast R to the application, so that whenever we create a record, the UI can know, so the user can know that something has occurred. So I'm going to go to the NuGet packages, and then I'm going to search for toast. So toast R, so I type in toast R, then I'm going to install this package. Alright, modification to the web API config, so that I can add, so in the URL that I create, I can place in the action name as well. Alright, so I'm going to go inside app start config. So this line here, route template, beside controller, I'm just going to add action. Okay, next I'm going to create a folder called data layer, just to kind of separate out the project a little bit. It can be called anything, I just choose to call it data layer. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add the EDMX to the project. So I go right click, add new, click on data, then ADO.NET entity data model. So I'm just going to rename it custom registration API model. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to try and connect to the database that was created earlier, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to add the model for table user details. So if there wasn't a connection created, then click new connection. If you already had a connection, it would appear here. Alright, so I'm going to put in the server name, and I'm going to search for the database, custom registration DB 2017. It's a good practice to click test connection to ensure that it is available, and click OK. So alright, so in the connection string, this is what the name of the entity will be called. So just click next, and then here you can select what tables you would like to add. You don't have to add all of them, or if there is for example store procedures or so on for you to add. I'll just be adding the one table. So I expand tables, just show you, and then I select user detail and finish. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create another, so I'm going to build a project first, then I'm going to create a I'm going to create a data link service. Let's call it that. That will be the the method that is going to handle taking the information that is sent from the UI and storing it to the database and vice versa. So this is a table that was created. Create a folder where I'm going to store my data link service methods. Data link services. It's an interface. So I'm going to create an interface and a class. So it will be called user management. Alright, so I'm going to create the user management class. So this is going to be called user registration. Alright, so we're going to be creating a model that will be storing the information that is going to be used to send across the data. So what I want to do now, I want to connect to the entities, to the database connection string that was previously created. So I'm going to resolve this, add in the reference. So I'm going to call it DB. So what I'm going to do next, alright, so I'm going to create a model in the meantime. So I'm going to go to the models folder and I'm going to create a class called user model. Alright, so here I'm going to add the getters and setters associated. So a fast way that you can do, instead of typing out everything, I go into the EDMX, then I go down to the .tt, and then I find the table that I'm looking for. Then I just copy the getters and setters here that was created from the database side. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to accept user I'm going to create an instance of this. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut the table user detail. Since it's also one, I don't need any loop or anything. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to find the values. Alright, so the detail, email address, etc. Alright. I almost forgot. I need to enter the password. Not password. ID. So I'm going to. So it's a GUID. So I'm just going to create a GUID, local instance. ID, and it's going to be equal to GUID dot new GUID. Alright. Then what I'm going to do next, I'm going to call, I'm going to find the table. Then I'm going to add those values that I just associated with the table. I'm going to add them to the database. You know what I'm going to do next is just save. It's also a good practice to capture if any exception has occurred. So I'm just going to put in a catch. Alright, so for now I'm just going to read through the exception. If an exception has occurred, I'm going to format the document. So that is edit, advanced, format document. Alright, so I'm going to call an instance of, I'm going to declare this inside of the interface. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create an API. I could use the values API, but I prefer to create a different one. Alright, so I'm just to show you how to create one. So I'm going to go add Web API Controller 2.1 or whatever version it is at that time, and then I'm going to leave the controller on it. So I'm going to call it custom registration API. Alright, I don't need these, because I'll be creating a custom one. Alright, so I'll go public. Alright, so first thing, it's HTTP post that we'll be doing. Like to declare action name, you don't have to, so I prefer doing that. Then I'm just going to call it register user. Alright, so I'm going to now define the service service method that will be accessible by the application front end, JavaScript in particular. Alright, so I'm going to call an instance, I'm going to call the interface, so that's user management. Should I return anything? Alright, for now I won't return anything. So I'll go user manage. I'm gonna find the user registration, and I'm gonna pass the user model to it. Oh, why I'm getting this error because I did not inherit the user. I didn't So what I should have done, inside of user manager management, I should have inherited from the interface. So that's what I should have done. Alright, so that should resolve it. Alright, let me just return a bool, boolean, then after save successful, then return true. Okay. Then make the adjustment in the interface. And the controller. So return type will be true. Or it's going to throw an error. Alright, so I'm just going to build a project. So the project was built successfully, the solution. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to edit one of the views instead of creating a new one. So I'm going to just use the index homepage. I'm just going to remove it. I'm just going to add some simple a simple table. Not really. Alright, I'm just going to add a simple form. Nothing fancy. We can modify that later. Alright, so we'll be storing. So we need a first name, last name, email address, and password field. So input type text. I'm gonna have an ID txt first name. Alright. Class. Alright, I won't add any style to it for now. Alright, so I'm gonna add one for last name. Email address. So it's going to be of type email and one for password. Later on in the next part of this series, I will be encrypting the password, but for now I won't. So it's going to be of type password. So type password will hide the value, and it's also going to add a button. User. Alright, so I'm just gonna, so as I say, I'm not going to style it right now, so I'm just going to make it as basic as possible. Save. So we're just going to run it to see how it looks. Alright, so I'm going to make a slight adjustment, just to add some placeholders inside the text box and just add a value so it's readable. Alright, so I'm just going to quickly do that. So placeholder first name. should be good. Okay. Alright, so what I'm going to do next, I'm going to add to it a JavaScript Ajax in particular class, so that I can take the values from hook boxes and then pass it to the API and store it to the database. Alright, so let me just create this JavaScript jQuery library. So I'm just going to put it inside of scripts. JavaScript file, register user, so I'm going to call it register user Ajax card. So I'm just going to use a simple click event to trigger the method. Alright, so I'm going to put the URL. I don't like to hard code the URL, at least the initial part, just in case, for example, you decide to host it or something. So I'm just going to put a base URL. So that will be document.location.origin. So that will take into account, for example, HTTP localhost 2020. So that's what will be added to the URL. And if, for example, you host it and it's http/abc, it will use that, so it will be more dynamic. Alright, so I'm going to create a replica of the model. Another block for the model of this model here, the user model. So it's going to be a replica where I'm going to take these things here. Let me just copy it just for ease of tracking it. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create something called user data. So what I'm going to do here, so these are supposed to match up with the names from the model. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just take the values from the text box. Let's reuse this. Alright, so that will be txt first name, sorry, not supposed to be a semicolon, it's supposed to be a comma. Then last name, let's create 2 more. Then the next one will be the email address. I realized that my jQuery is outdated, but I don't think it should have a problem. But I would suggest that you update your JavaScript jQuery library. Alright. So what I'm going to do next, since I have created the model to capture the data, what I'm going to do now is create a Ajax call. Let's tidy it up a little. Alright, so first thing I need to put the type, and as stated before, it's a post. Then we need to put the URL. So we're going to use about the same variable that was created called base URL. Then we're going to put plus. Then we're going to try and access this method here, this method in particular. Alright, so we need to now call this controller. So we have to say so slash API, so they know, so that .NET knows that is the API that you're trying to access. Then custom registration API. Remember, in NVC, when you're calling it, you do not put in the controller aspect of it, just everything leading up to controller. Alright, so custom registration API in slash the method that we're trying to get to. Since we have an action name, that we'll just use this action name instead of this, because this is like an alias to the method name. Alright. Next. Next we need to take the data. So I'm going to stringify it. I'm going to use JSON dot stringify. Then I'm going to pass the name user data to it. So I'm putting the string into a JSON format. Then I'm going to put the content type. So the application that's JSON. Charset Alright, so I'm going to put the data type, so it's known what to expect. So the data type will be JSON. So now we want to do something on success. So function return data. Return. It can be called anything. I just choose to call it return data. Then what we're going to do is if it's successful, we're just going to display that it was successful. So return. Alright, as well, we need to do something if there's an error. If an error occurred, we need to also let the user know. A comma. Alright, so I'm going to use toast r.error to show what's there. Alright, so what I'm going to do next, I'm just going to add to this particular file. I'm going to add toaster to it, as well as inside the shared folder layout. I'm going to add the CSS so that it can show that something has occurred. So build. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to try and run. So I'm going to just rerun this form. Almost forgot. I need to call the Ajax function that I just created, and I'm going to try and run it. So let me just run a test. Remember, no validation is here as yet, so I can enter whatever I want. Alright. Let me just check something. Let me just check to see if everything is okay. Oh, JavaScript is not defined. So let me just add JavaScript, jQuery to the project. Then I'm going to rerun it. Enter John Brown John at gmail. Alright, so let me try again. Okay, so as you saw a while ago, the toast came up briefly, and let's check inside the database. So here it is, John Brown at gmail.com, and the password. So as I said in later parts of this module or series, we're going to encrypt this password. And apart from encrypting the password, we're going to also validate to ensure that you cannot just enter something like this inside the email field. So you want to, whenever a user doesn't enter the correct format, you want to prevent them from registering. like I just did a while ago. You don't want that to happen. So we're going to be adding some validation in the next part of this series. Thank you for watching, and please rate and subscribe for more. Thank you.